Disney parks are amazing. Inside these magical places, we can find everything we ever dreamt for. They have amazing rides, delicious snacks, and lots of entertainment. From shows to fireworks and parades, Disney has it all. Today, we'll be taking a look at some of the best Disney parade floats around the world. Disneyland Paris, Disney Classics Parade. The Disney Classics Parade was first seen when Disneyland Paris opened in 1992. This parade had 11 floats representing some of the most classic Disney characters of the moment. As time passed, some of the parade floats changed and were replaced by newer floats that had more popular characters, like the Lion King or Pocahontas. It ran until 1996, when it was replaced by the Hunchback of Notre Dame Topsy-Turvy Cavalcade. Dumbo Float.
Uh-oh! The magic feather! Dumbo! Come on, fly! Open them ears! The magic feather was just a gag! You can fly! Honest you can! Hurry! Open them up!
Led by a group of circus clowns, this float depicted one of the most memorable scenes in Dumbo, where the elephant is part of a firefighting routine in the circus. Suspended by a curved pole, Dumbo swung around a burning building. The design of the building used forced perspective to make it appear taller than it actually was. Dumbo's ears would move, and the ladder in front of him would lean back and forth precariously. A handful of clowns dressed as firefighters danced around and operated the fire truck. We love this float because though Dumbo sometimes has representation in fireworks shows in the various parks, we don't see him much in parades and shows. Disney Afternoon Float. Capitalizing on the popularity of the Disney Afternoon television block, this parade featured a multi-level float to the house main characters from the shows running at the time. This included Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, and Adventures of the Gummy Bears. Each character sat in a plane held up by silver posts. Along the posts were small clouds to make them less noticeable. The plane's propellers would spin as the float moved along. The most impressive part of the float is how tall it is, and that the planes are stacked on top of one another. Getting everyone in and out of the planes must have taken a lot of time and work. We think the end result is worth it. Cinderella Float. This actually consisted of two floats tethered together, one for Cinderella's carriage and one for the horses pulling it. The horses are massive, and it's easy to get a sense of their scale when you compare them to the cast member playing the coachman. They slowly lifted up and reared back, giving a sense of movement to the carriage. Cinderella and Prince Charming sat inside the pumpkin carriage, waving to guests, and the fairy godmother stood behind it with her wand. It's interesting to note that the design and paint on these floats was very realistic compared to the Disney Afternoon Float. The carriage was also given the appearance of a pumpkin instead of the classic carriage. Though it had a much different feel than the original Cinderella animated film, it had a very whimsical and storybook-like aesthetic that we love. Disneyland Paris, Once Upon a Dream Parade. Disney's Once Upon a Dream Parade was created for the 15th anniversary of Disneyland Paris. It premiered on March 31st, 2007, and originally had 8 floats. This parade lasted until 2012, when it closed for a while to become Disney's Magic on Parade, which was basically the same parade, but with 2 more floats and themed for the park's 20th anniversary. Alice in Pinocchios Float. This float shows that you don't need a lot of characters on board to tell a story or make a memorable experience for guests. This float depicted when Alice grew so large that her arms and legs popped out of the White Rabbit's cottage. On her feet sat Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and she held a tea kettle and a teacup holding the March hare. Alice looked around, and the flowers near her feet twirled and swayed. The backside of the cottage housed a large cuckoo clock, where Pinocchio waved to guests, and 2 cast members dressed as marionettes bounced on bungee cord swings. It was an interesting choice to put 2 very different scenes on the same float, but since the cuckoo clock is the same shape as the backside of the cottage, it blends together surprisingly well. Peter Pan and Mary Poppins Float. The double-side floats continued in Once Upon a Dream, this time combining 2 classic stories set in England. The Peter Pan side of the float showed the Jolly Roger with Tinkerbell and the crocodile in front. Peter, Wendy, and the ship's captain were on board, taunting Hook and Smee as they fled through the street. Big Ben served as a transition into the Mary Poppins side. Mary sat on a horse, and Bert danced around a small carousel sat among the smoky rooftops of London. Step in Time played as a few penguins twirled napkins behind the float. The Peter Pan side of the float was designed in a way where you got the sense that the boat was rocking, and Big Ben tilting at an angle. It brought a sense of speed and action on a float that moved pretty slow, which we love. Villains Float. It wouldn't really be a Disney parade without a float dedicated to a villain, but what about a handful of them? Escorted by a group of cast members dressed in flame and twirling fiery ribbons, the float featured Jafar in snake form, Hades and Maleficent at the base of Bald Mountain, where Chernobog pointed a menacing finger at the parade viewers below. Maleficent had a unique costume for this parade, which swapped out her movie-accurate black dress to one made of flames and a red headpiece. On the side of the float, Scar poked out from a mountain cave, and the evil queen stood behind a bubbling cauldron. On the backside sat a massive Ursula, who taunted the poor unfortunate souls dancing before her. Oftentimes in Disney daytime parades, we don't see a lot of villains, so it's nice to see things switched up. Hong Kong Disneyland, Glow-in-the-Dark Parade. Glow-in-the-Park Halloween Parade was a parade held during the Disney's Haunted Halloween event in Hong Kong Disneyland. This parade debuted during Halloween time of 2007 and lasted until 2013, when it was replaced by the Villains Night Out mini parade. During its time, the parade had some changes, like a new float for the finale or the addition of the Headless Horseman at the beginning of the parade. Jack Skellington Float. This was the first float in the Glow-in-the-Dark parade, which only ran during the separately ticketed Haunted Halloween event. Usually, opening floats are smaller and not as detailed as the rest of the parade, but this one is a big exception. And I do mean big. The Talking Jack was absolutely huge. He had a good range of motion too. His head and upper body could spin left and right, and he could lean down to speak to guests as well. On the backside of the float, Sally and two dancers twirled to the music. Dr. Finkelstein Float. It seems this parade shows things in chronological order, as this float depicted Dr. Finkelstein creating his new companion to replace Sally. Different heads were rotated over the body on the table, while a bony reindeer bucked along an electrical arc above. In the center of the float sat Dr. Finkelstein in his chair, operating the machine with a remote. Behind him was Igor and two more reindeer, spinning and causing a fuss in the lab. Lab supplies and trinkets lined the shelves of the side of the float. We love this float because it depicted a scene and characters from The Nightmare Before Christmas that don't get love anywhere else in the parks. And there's a lot of little details in the knickknacks found in Finkelstein's lab. Disneyland, Mickey's Soundsational Parade. Mickey's Soundsational Parade opened back in 2011. This parade celebrated the music and songs from many Disney films. The parades had daytime and nighttime runs for a while, until 2015. The nighttime performances went on hiatus during Disneyland's 60th anniversary celebration to perform the new Paint the Night parade. It also went on hiatus in 2018 for the Pixar Fest event, where it was replaced by the Pixar Play parade. It then came back for a while until its last run in July 2019. 3 Caballeros Float. Led by Jose, Panchito, and a group of dancers wearing piñata-inspired outfits, this float featured Donald Duck waving and dancing on a large drum, while dancers twirled along the street behind him. Maybe this isn't the most impressive float in a Disney parade, but we're happy to see more obscure properties represented in the parks. And for a parade that celebrated music, the 3 Caballeros was an excellent choice. Lion King Float. Moving away from Central and South America, we make our way to the Pride Lands of Africa, usually considered a high point for this parade. This float and its ensemble gave us a lot to look at. Turk, King Louie, a group of monkeys, and a tribal dancer were at the front. The tribal dancer had a hoop skirt so wide that it was on wheels. An adult Simba stood on top of a large drum, with a metallic sun behind him. On a musical cue, Simba would rear his head back and give a mighty roar as Zazu flew behind him. Behind the float, 2 stilt walkers would zigzag across the parade route and wave at guests. Princess and the Frog Float. Led by a group of Mardi Gras dancers, Princess Tiana sat and waved from a rotating rowboat on the bayou, being moved in the water by a steamboat behind her. On the bow of the boat, Louis hopped around and played his trumpet, while a few boat riders waved from a balcony above. This float had a lot of whimsical and sparkly details, like the dangling jewels on the parasol shading Tiana, or the gold scrolling along the sides of the steamboat. Jolly Holiday Float. Mary Poppins and Bert didn't appear on this float, but riding in front of it on carousel horses. Around them danced a group of chimney sweeps, their faces smudged with soot. The front of the float was designed to look like it was built on a bicycle trailer of sorts, with a large man pedaling in front. On the first half of the float, penguins danced among a handful of mechanical contraptions. On the section behind them, chimney sweeps danced and sang to Step in Time among the rooftops of London at night. This part of the float had a ton of details to look at. There aren't a lot of straight lines or smooth curves. Everything seems a little tilted and out of place. Which of these parade floats is your favorite? There are lots more amazing parades that we can cover, but if you want to see them for yourself, our friends at pixievacations.com can help you plan your perfect vacation to Disneyland, Disney World, or a Disney cruise, specifically tailored to your vacation style and budget. And working with a Pixie is completely free. So talk with them to make the best out of your Disney vacation.